Now, we get to the next important part of the SchockCast, the news and analysis from the past week. But before going on, take a moment to click the subscribe button below. Then you'll find it below in the YouTube comment section, and hit the bell to be notified when the next SchockCast happens. Those of you listening via MP3, make sure that you are subscribed to the Shock Letter at theshockletter.com. And there's an important reason to be subscribed to the Shock Letter, since I usually do not have the time to talk about more than just a fraction of the news that I analyze here on the SchockCast. So subscribe to the Shock Letter and get all the news and links that I analyze for free. In fact, everyone should sign up for the Shock Letter. Subscribing and unsubscribing is easy. Just click an unsubscribe button at the bottom of every Shock Letter, and it's easy to unsubscribe. And there's no way that I would ever share the subscription list with anyone. Period. I'm not in this for the money, and never will be. Okay, so let's get on with the article. Saudi Arabia halts oil shipments through the Red Sea at potential watershed in the Yemen war. This might be the reason why Trump is threatening to attack Iran, which, and this was the article that really got me started thinking about all this, the Houthis are a proxy for Iran, so any attack on Saudi oil tankers in the Red Sea is an attack from Iran. Remember that deal between the Gulf Arabs and the United States that we talked about, I spent so much time talking about, that they will sell their oil for US dollars as long as they're protected by the United States? If these attacks on the Saudi tankers continue, America will be forced to go to war. This is not and cannot be hyperbole. The fate of America is wrapped up in the petrodollar system. If the system falls, America falls. It is that serious. And then there's this article, and this is where the two articles, the one I just talked about, and then this one, really made the connection that launched me into what I wrote about over this past week and what I just talked about. I don't know if this is, and I should say, Donald Trump could be ready to order a strike against Iran. Australian government figures say, and this is via the Australian Broadcasting Corporation News, ABC Australia. I don't know if this is just saber rattling or if it represents a real intention of the United States to attack Iran. Iran does need to have their nuclear facilities bombed flat. I sincerely believe that this is necessary if there is to be any hope for stability in a vitally important area of the world. We will see what happens. Now, moving off of the petrodollar system and the threat of all of this, we get to a different kind of thing. It's Roe v. Wade. Reversal would send abortion issue back to states. This is from the Kansas City Star. I believe that Roe v. Wade needs to be overturned for two big reasons, and a third, smaller one. First, it's just plain evil. Abortion is murder, plain and simple, except when the life of the mother is threatened. Second, it's a legal precedent that damages the rights of states to set their own laws. That third and smaller reason is, well, it's not so small, but giving states the ability to ban abortion, well, I would love to know which states do that have the morality to ban abortion. You want to be in a state with the least chance of God judging it, and banning abortion would be a good sign that maybe that state has enough morality that it will escape the judgment of God. God's judgment is coming, and the immoral states will be ground zero. Then there's a YouTube video, and it's Mark Duplass, Ben Shapiro, and the evils of crossing the aisle. This is a David Wood video, and David Wood is just awesome all the time. And he really roasts some spineless idiots that deserve to be roasted. Here's his YouTube write-up. Quote, recently, Hollywood darling Mark Duplass tweeted, Fellow liberals, if you are interested at all in crossing the aisle, you should consider following Ben Shapiro. I don't agree with him on much, but he's a genuine person who once helped me for no other reason than to be nice. He doesn't bend the truth. His intentions are good." Close quote. And then David Wood goes on in his comment, "This was too much for his fans to bear, so there was an instant backlash. Not surprisingly, Duplass repented of his sins against the mob and apologized for his error, just as Richard Dawkins was backtracking for his comments about the Islamic call to prayer." Close quote. Well done, David Wood. Well done indeed. Now the rest of you, listen to that YouTube video. Then there's this one. In fact, it was this article that really made me, actually talks about what I wanted to write about on Friday in the shock letter. March honors Warsaw's Jews, an activist who warned of genocide. This poor guy killed himself in despair over the incredible inaction and indifference to the plight of the Jews in Poland. His name is Shmuel Ziegelboim. Shmuel Ziegelboim, and I think Shmuel means Samuel or Shmuel. I completely identify with his feelings of utter hopelessness. Shmuel told everyone that he knew of what was happening to the Jews, and the Allies did nothing and did not care. The average person was equally indifferent. People did not care and were too blind to see the horrifying truth. Shmuel yelled as loud as he could, and when the Warsaw Ghetto fell, he did the one thing that every Jew is told that they should never do. He committed suicide. It seems like he did it in an attempt to gather attention to the plight of the Jews, but it was a failed effort, because the average person did not and does not care about the Jews. In fact, the average person may even be happy that there are fewer Jews around. Whatever the reason, the blood of 6 million Jews is on the hands of America, the UK, and the rest of Europe that did nothing. When the Jews were being murdered, they did nothing. In fact, some eagerly participated. Denmark saved their Jewish populations, and Sweden provided safe haven. Switzerland, by her ability to rebuff Hitler, also saved her Jewish inhabitants from genocide. However, France and other European countries eagerly participated in the genocide. Now, why do I identify with Shmuel Ziegelboim? Because I, and probably you, am yelling about the dangers facing all of us, and so very, very few are listening. It's almost as if people are choosing to go to their own destruction instead of avoiding it. There is also a parallel to the warnings given to the Jews of Europe, as Hitler was preparing to kill all the Jews. Most of the Jews wouldn't listen, so they died. Those who did listen and had the means to do something about it escaped. There is an interesting parallel between the World War II era and today. However, I said the word interesting. Maybe a more accurate word would be horrifying. Then there's this one. Expert makes the case for $400 per barrel oil. This is an interesting wrinkle in the crude oil debate. I did not realize that low sulfur diesel was being pushed so hard by governments around the world. $400 a barrel oil is going to kill us. I mean, there's no surviving that. It just isn't. Okay. This next one is Russiagate is like 9/11, except it's made of pure narrative. Caitlin Johnston. Well, I have something to tell you. 9/11 is pretty much narrative also. But anyway, aside from the buildings that were destroyed and the people killed. Anyway, the reason why I pay attention to this Russiagate foolishness is because it acts as a measurement of corruption and insanity. And right now, we are at never before seen levels of stupidity, dishonesty, and madness. And Caitlin Johnston captures the essence of this observation with the first two paragraphs of her article. Quote, "The last few days have been truly amazing. I didn't even write an article yesterday. I've just been staring transfixed by my social media feeds, watching liberal Americans completely lose their minds. I can't look away. It's like watching a slow-motion train wreck and everyone on the train is being really homophobic." I'm not sure what that means. Anyway, where'd they get that? "I've been writing about Russiagate since it started. I can honestly say this is the worst it's ever been. By far. The most hysterical, the most shrill, the most emotional, the most cartoonishly over-the-top and hyperbolic. The fact that Trump met with Putin in private and then publicly expressed doubt about the establishment Russia narrative has sent some political factions of America into an emotional state that is indistinguishable from what you'd expect if Russia had bombed New York City. This despite the fact that the establishment Russia narrative consists of no actual visible events whatsoever. It is made of pure narrative." Close quote. There's a special kind of self-destructive madness at work in America and Europe. And you don't tend to find it anywhere else. It's one of the reasons why I like living in Taiwan and Israel. In fact, as I think about my travels around the world, I have generally preferred less developed countries over the more developed kind. Less developed countries aren't infected by the same kind of sickness that you find in affluent, effete, and pretentious societies. Of course, less developed countries have their own problems with corruption and madness, but the average person seems much more real and down to earth. I like that, so I guess I'll continue to like less developed countries. So if you wish to lure me back to my birthplace, please stop the madness first, okay? After the madness dies out, maybe I'll be willing to go back. But I don't think so. We'll see. All right, this one's horrifying. The title is "He Slept with Cary Grant and Spencer Tracy." That's right, it's titled "He Slept with Cary Grant and Spencer Tracy and Changed Hollywood History." It's just amazing. I stopped reading this halfway through. The writer of this piece is way too sympathetic to the immorality of Hollywood. But you should read at least the first half of this so that you will understand how awful Hollywood was from the very early on. When people are this immoral, they will do their very best to take you down with them. They want you to be as immoral as they are. They want you to descend to the level of their own depravity. The satanic immorality of these depraved individuals has been projected into the homes and minds of everyone, including myself. And we enjoy their depravity. Here's what Paul says about that. Quote, "Who, knowing the judgment of God that they which commit such things are worthy of death, not only do the same, but have pleasure in them that do them." That's Romans chapter 1, verse 32. And Paul was speaking about those who knew God. Really, read all of Romans chapter 1, and then think about how that applies to our churches. That's a stinging indictment of those who know God, but choose to rebel against Him. Be careful about the movies, videos, television, music, and other forms of entertainment media that you consume. The people performing for you, well, they want your soul. Then, this one is, "When credit cycles blow up, they're really destructive." Chris Martenson, Greg Hunter's USA Watchdog. I like Chris Martenson for a lot of reasons, and one of those reasons is his crash course. You can find it on his website, peakprosperity.com, crash course. I'm just annoyed that it's so difficult to watch those videos on his website, since peakprosperity.com, the website, is blocking Taiwan internet service providers. So I can't go to his website and watch those again. I have to go to YouTube. So if anyone knows Chris Martenson or Adam Taggart, please tell them to stop blocking Taiwan so that I can watch their content directly. Unfortunately, there's a reason for blocking Taiwan ISPs. Years ago, Taiwan was a top producer of spam, and some ISPs in Taiwan are still producing spam. But overall, the problem has moved to other countries. So, Chris, Adam, stop blocking Taiwan ISPs. I want to watch your videos and I want to go to your website. They aren't as bad as they used to be, really. Taiwan, we're great. I mean, anyway. But back to the main point of this interview. Chris talked about the end of the credit cycle and the horrifying damage that this will cause. And here's one paragraph from the write-up that Greg Hunter did on his website. Quote, Martenson says a debt reset is locked in, and somebody is going to pay. Martenson explains, when you have as much debt that the United States has, the overall debt level in the United States, including auto loans, mortgages, consumer debt, student loans, and corporate debt, and whatever, we're sitting at about $60 trillion right now. It's a huge number. And when you get to this level of indebtedness, plus those unfunded or underfunded liabilities, when you get to this level of indebtedness, there is really only one question left to be resolved. And that is, who is going to eat the losses? And that's it. So, when you start asking that question, the banks and people writing the laws are pretty sure that they are not going to take the losses. The person relying on the pension is the person that is going to eat the losses. There is no way to make this work. Here's where the social tension comes in. Even as ordinary middle-class people are being destroyed in this process, the rich are taking more and more out of the system. That is courtesy of the policies of the Federal Reserve. But the big risk is when these printing sprees, these credit cycles finally burst. They are wildly destructive. They are fast, they are hard, they are sharp, and they hurt. Close quote. I would also like to add, they kill. Millions, even billions, will be dead when this is all over. It will lead to Gog and Magog. It will cause massive disruptions in world commerce. And remember that Gog and Magog will result in Ezekiel's Fire. And if you don't know what Ezekiel's Fire is, go to ezekielsfire.com and read that. You need to. Okay, next one. Highly unstable equilibrium. Why one CIO, Chief Information Officer, expects China will crash the market to restore balance. A Zero Hedge article. This rather short article provides a good definition of something called prisoner's dilemma. It's a part of another something called game theory, and I think that it's important enough to quote a large portion of the description. So, let me tell you, by quoting the article, what prisoner's dilemma is, if you don't already know. Two members of a criminal gang are arrested and imprisoned. Each prisoner is in solitary confinement with no means of communicating with the other. The prosecutors lack sufficient evidence to convict the pair on their principal charge, but they have enough to convict both on a lesser charge. Simultaneously, the prosecutors offer each prisoner a bargain. Each prisoner is given the opportunity either to betray the other by testifying that the other committed the crime or to cooperate with the other by remaining silent. The offer is, if A and B each betray each other, each of them serves 2 years in prison. If A betrays B, but B remains silent and loyal, A will be set free and B will serve 3 years in prison, and vice versa. If A and B both remain silent, both will only serve 1 year in prison on the lesser charge. If 2 players play Prisoner's Dilemma more than once in succession and they remember previous actions of their opponent and change their strategy accordingly, meaning if one person acts as prisoner A and another person acts as prisoner B and they go through several cycles of this decision-making process, the game is called Iterated Prisoner's Dilemma. The Iterated Prisoner's Dilemma game is fundamental to some theories of human cooperation and trust. On the assumption that the game can model transactions between 2 people requiring trust, cooperation and cooperative behavior in populations may be modeled by a multiplayer iterated version of the game, which I will explore in today's anecdote below. Again, I'm still quoting. In the iterated Prisoner's Dilemma version, the classic game is played repeatedly between the same prisoners or same players, who continuously have the opportunity to penalize the other for previous decisions. If the number of times the game will be played is known to the players, then, by backward induction, 2 classically rational players will betray each other repeatedly, for the same reasons as the single-shot variant. But in an infinite or unknown length game, there is no fixed optimum strategy, and Prisoner's Dilemma tournaments have been held to compete and test algorithms for such cases in an attempt to determine optimal strategies. In such tournaments, when these encounters are repeated over a long period of time, with many players, each with different strategies, greedy strategies tend to do very poorly in the long run, while more altruistic, meaning altruism being the willingness to benefit others without reward, altruistic strategies do better, as judged purely by self-interest. Close quote. Now, that was a lot, and you probably were wondering why I believe this to be so important. Well, first of all, it is an excellent way of testing human interaction when the amount of information is low. You might even think of it as a temperature gauge on our willingness to cooperate with each other, as the quote indicated. Did you remember about the above definition it said about greedy strategies? Well, studies done many years ago determined that the Arabs are the absolute worst at Prisoner's Dilemma. Greed and a profound inability to cooperate with anyone, not even with each other, is at the core of the Arab psyche, and it's probably the second biggest reason why they have been unable to defeat Israel. God, of course, is the biggest reason why they've been unable to defeat Israel, but I've noticed that God uses such methods as greed and an inability to cooperate as a means to stop people from being successful in their evil designs. The Arabs have always been their own worst enemies, so much so that I've called them accidental Zionists. Everything that they've done has actually helped Israel, even though they've done their very best to destroy her. And believe me, they really have. Okay, but the article isn't about the Arab-Israel conflict. It's about a different kind of competition. And this article makes a point that is very cogent. Global trade is a never-ending prisoner's dilemma. This is very true. China is the one forced to play a game of tit for tat, while Trump attempts his reset of the trading relationship. There's going to be a lot of pain and suffering that will come out of this trade war. Okay, on to more about trade, but this one is trade deficits and the American empire. From Zero Hedge. Remember, here's an interesting subtext for what I'm about to talk about, because remember, trade deficits were always going to happen when you have a situation like the petrodollar system. It's inevitable. America is one of the most unique empires ever to arise. This empire is based upon America's control of OPEC via Saudi Arabia, and of course, Saudi Arabia's control of the United States. That control requires everyone to get dollars or go without oil. The only way to get dollars is to work harder for less pay, to create something that some American will give you dollars for. Unfortunately, America has gotten fat and happy, in some cases literally, wasting her power on foolishness. So the empire is in decline, in pretty much the same way that the Roman Empire declined and then fell. We human beings are so stupid that we keep repeating the failures described in history. It's truly maddening to watch, and I wonder how much of this white hair is because of my own frustration with watching the stupidity. Now, the reason for this article is included within my description above. If Taiwan needs dollars to buy oil, they will make sure that what they try to sell to Americans is cheaper and even better quality than what an American can sell in America. I'm looking into printing t-shirts, and the Taiwanese company that I talked to said that they were out of my size until the end of August because of all the t-shirts that they were sending to the U.S. Each Taiwanese t-shirt sold in America means that an American t-shirt is not being sold. And it will always be this way because Taiwan desperately needs dollars to buy oil. But we shouldn't claim that this is an awful thing. As this article points out, by producing the cheapest t-shirts at the best quality, Taiwan is essentially paying a tax to the U.S. They're giving extra value to the U.S. in return for the ability to use dollars to buy oil. The article puts it this way, quote, "Looked as a whole, the system works. The U.S. provides security and a common currency to the world, and in return, the world, made prosperous by American protection and financial integration, provides the U.S. with goods and services." Close quote. It says a lot more than that, but that is a good summary. And by the way, think about the Roman Empire. Look at what Rome did for prosperity in the Mediterranean basin. People were made prosperous by the Roman Empire, but at the same time, they were enslaved by the Romans. Interesting parallel, don't you think? Anyway, what happens when the U.S. Navy is no longer able to protect the Gulf Arabs and keep the sea lanes open? What happens when American politicians finally abuse the U.S. dollar to the point where people stop wanting it? All of the power of America and all of America's ability and strength and wealth goes away, and chaos sets in until a new empire rises to take her place. As I have said before, America is either the beast or the beast rider. The only other option is for America to be so horribly destroyed that she is neither. Okay. Here's another one. It's interesting. It's actually the term tail wagging the dog comes to mind. The title is "Great Nations Are Destroyed by Being Pulled into Wars to Defend Tiny Ones." This is interesting. What would have happened today if Britain stayed out of, or at least delayed her entrance into, World War I? And there would have been every reason to let Belgium be dragged under by Germany. King Leopold II of Belgium was responsible for the genocide of 10 million Congolese Africans between 1885 and 1908. If you're willing to murder that many people just to make money, you deserve to lose your country. I'm very sorry, Belgium, but your king was a murderous tyrant. He burns it. Anyway, Hitler, but Belgian. Of course, Britain wasn't much better with her own massacres and the forcing of the Chinese to become addicted to opium. So they all deserved their fate, but I sometimes wonder how history could have been different if Britain had not chosen to defend Belgium in World War I. This brings to mind something that is fascinating. It's a book written by Major General Smedley Butler called "War is a Racket," and he wrote that book in 1935. General Smedley Butler is undoubtedly the greatest American hero that the world has ever seen. He stopped a coup d'etat against FDR, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, that would have destroyed the United States and placed her firmly on the side of Nazi Germany. And he was probably the best tactician and strategist that the U.S. has ever seen. But did we listen to his warnings about America's wars? Of course not. I'm afraid that America, like the Roman Empire, is all about war. It's all about war. We can't stop going to war. Then there's Russia's new weapons, nuclear parity, and arms race. What's going on? YouTube. This video is definitely worth watching. It's not very long, but it skillfully represents or presents the utter corruption and hypocrisy of American politicians, as well as their venal stupidity. Then it shows what Russia did about America's foolish strategy, with a host of powerful new weapons that America cannot stop. It's almost as if America chose to create Gog and Magog that would act as a shield or guard to the rest of that alliance that would come down to attack Israel. That's right. It's the coming of Gog and Magog, brought to you in part by the morons in Washington, D.C. It's a wonder that I haven't torn out all of my hair and gone bald. Then there's an interesting video done by Bill Still, and I love his sense of humor about his own name. I actually also have a sense of humor about my own name, so I enjoy people with senses of humor. With a sense of humor. This one is Hannity Nails the Coup, 2309 edition 2309 YouTube. This should go into the corruption section, but this is so good, so hard-hitting, it's a must-see. Seriously, listen to this video. It lays out everything. And the shocking thing to me, nothing is being done about it. Jeff Sessions isn't doing anything. Donald Trump hasn't said a word about doing anything. Congress is sitting on their thumbs. All that we've heard is talk, 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 talk. Do not tell me that Donald Trump is a great president until he does something to clean up this mess. And no, I will not tolerate calls to be patient. The time for patience is over. Get this done, Mr. President, or resign. I shall cool down a second by talking about Bank of America can't explain safety deposit box disappearances from CBS Sacramento. For those of you with a safety deposit box in a bank, you need to read this. What you have in your box is not safe, and the bank won't feel any obligation to reimburse you for what you lost. There is no honor or honesty anymore in America. Okay, so I'm upset again. Anyway, sorry. And then there's this one. It's about the tragedy of the white South African farmers. It just breaks my heart. Title is We Fear for Our Lives. First 50 white South African families start resettlement in Russia from Zero Hedge. Very few people have been concerned about the plight of the South African farmers. But our numbers are growing, those of us that are concerned. These people are being forced off of the land that they have loved and on which they have lived. I'm just glad that Russia has embraced them so openly. Well done, Russia. My hope is that the white South African farmers will be able to all flee the danger that they're in. In fact, to all of my white South African friends, you should get out. South Africa is going to be destroyed. Okay, moving on. This one is... I saw this on Imgur, and it's a neo-Nazi quote. And it's attributed to... I can't remember who it's often attributed to. But the neo-Nazis love to quote this. And they claim that it was from Voltaire. There it is, Voltaire. It's not. It was coined by a neo-Nazi white nationalist, and I would love to have permission from God to bash his head in. But God does not hand out permission like that, and probably it's not right for me to want to bash his head in. Although, I know that the Bible provides certain circumstances in which it's permissible to bash someone's head in. But I'm sorry. That's only in self-defense in a time of war. And I doubt this guy is going to try to get me. But if he does, maybe I should buy that baseball bat, just in case. Anyway, here's the quote. To learn who rules over you, simply find out who you are not allowed to criticize. Close quote. That is from Kevin Alfred Strom, neo-Nazi dirtbag. However, this represents a great response. There is in the Imgur thing a great response to the neo-Nazi persons of uncertain parentage who make this quote. And by the way, the reason why they make this quote is because they want to talk about how you can't criticize the Jews and the Jewish Holocaust. Oh dear. Because you can't criticize the Jewish Holocaust and claim that it's a hoax, therefore the Jews must rule over us all. Morons. Okay, so someone responded to that quote, obviously we need to rise up against children with leukemia. Because when was the last time you heard anyone criticize children with leukemia, as if anyone would dare to? Alright, please understand that if you are a white nationalist neo-Nazi dirtbag, I consider you to be the lowest form of life on earth. Sorry. I think that there are bacteria who are better than you. Okay. U.S. diplomats act like imperial governors riding roughshod over sovereignty of national governments. This is from an RT op-ed. In case you were wondering who was the latest emperor, inheritor of the let me start that again. In case you were wondering who was the latest inheritor of the mantle of the Roman Empire, read this. And I've experienced the imperial power of the Roman or American passport. Because I was an American, I was less touchable than people from other countries who were in the same situation. Also, go look at the U.S. Embassy in any of the foreign countries that you might visit. Every single one of them is an imperial outpost. And if you enjoy the heady feeling of power, then you would enjoy being an American. However, I do not enjoy this. It's an abomination. I hate it. We Americans are not better than anyone else, but our psychopathic government is forcing everyone to bow before us. And I hate that with a passion. It almost makes me want to burn my passport. Then there's an interesting discussion. It's called When the U.S. Invaded Russia, from Consortium News. And it's true. The United States did invade Russia once upon a time. Who knew that the U.S. invaded Russia in 1918? Very, very few. Of course, most of this invasion was to safeguard supplies going to the Russians attempting to defeat the communists. It's interesting to think about how the course of history would have been changed if the U.S. had worked a little more forcefully to support the anti-communists. Unfortunately, I'm not sure that much would have changed, but you sometimes wonder how history would have worked out if we'd have been, or chosen to be, or do differently. Okay. Facebook executives defend having Fox News atrocious InfoWars on platform, from EW.com. Okay. Well, this is about dirtbag journalists attacking Facebook executives for allowing content that does not agree with their disgusting bias. That's like allowing flat earthers to decide what goes into a geography textbook. But maybe that's just me. I can say that it is completely and utterly insane. It's as if the journalists have gone mad, which would be the case if you bathed your brain cells in enough alcohol, and yes, that's exactly what they do. There's a part of me that is fascinated by the utter madness of these people, these journalists. But there's another part of me that is so disgusted I want to get that baseball bat I keep talking about and obtain permission from God to bash heads. But as I keep saying, God does not give out that permission. So I shall growl in frustration. This one is YouTube issues a new strike against Alex Jones' channel over hate speech and child endangerment, as if he would endanger any child. This is from The Verge. I'm not a fan of Alex Jones, but this is yet another strike against YouTube. I sincerely doubt that InfoWars said anything that deserved a strike or having videos taken down. In many ways, Alex is actually pretty tame. I know that sounds strange, but it's true. Then, Twitter is shadow banning prominent Republicans like the Republican National Convention chair and Trump Jr. spokesman, from Vice News. Vice is a left-wing organization, so it's pretty serious when they say the following, quote, "The Republican Party chair, Ronna McDaniel, several conservative Republican congressmen, and Donald Trump Jr.'s spokesman no longer appear on the auto-populated drop-down search box on Twitter," Vice News has learned. It's a shift that diminishes their reach on the platform, meaning the people that were shadow banned, and it's the same one being deployed against prominent racists to limit their visibility. I guess, since this is Vice, I would be probably considered a prominent racist since I think that Islam is awful. Okay. Moving on with their quote, with quoting them. The profiles continue to appear when conducting a full search, but not in the more convenient and visible drop-down box. The accounts appear to also populate if you already follow the person. Very sneaky that Twitter is doing this way. Democrats are not being shadow banned in the same way, according to a Vice News review. McDaniel's counterpart, Democratic Party Chair Tom Perez, and liberal members of Congress, including Representatives Maxine Waters, Joe Kennedy III, Keith Ellison, and Mark Pocan, all continue to appear in drop-down search results. Not a single member of the 78-person Progressive Caucus faces the same situation in Twitter's search. And then moving on to a next quote about Twitter. Twitter's troll hunt, however, has ensnared some of the most prominent Republicans in the country. Type in the names McDaniel. Conservative members of Congress like Representatives Mark Meadows, Jim Jordan, and Matt Gaetz, and Trump Jr.'s spokesman, Andrew Sarabian, for example. And Twitter's drop-down search bar does not show their profiles. The search menu also does not display the verified profile of Representative Devin Nunes of California, who's also head of the Congress Intelligence Oversight Committee. I mean, he's an important guy, right? Only his unverified one that he seldom uses to post. Close quote. Then the article went on to say that Mike Cernovich is far right. Wait, what? Really? Mike Cernovich? What? It makes me wonder what they think of, or how they think of me. And that might be the reason why Google is shadow banning me. Which is true. Google really is shadow banning some of my articles. I have discovered this on my own. Okay, moving on. And this is about corruption in the military takeover to solve it. What is going on with Hillary and the corruption being revealed in Washington is so huge that I doubt that it's possible to emphasize enough the seriousness of the situation. I believe that these revelations will eventually take down the Republic and replace the current government of the United States with one ruled by the generals. And please, do not discount this. Corruption is always how republics and kingdoms fall, and how the military takes over. Remember the generals that surround Trump. This was not an accident. However, please take note that public pressure for a military takeover never happens until people suffer economic and financial stress. So don't expect this takeover to happen until the economy turns sharply downward. The military will not want to see a repeat of the French Revolution, because that's the other possibility. And frankly, kids, you don't want a French Revolution. However, you also don't want a military coup, because that never ends well either. Remember, the military is also very corrupt. Okay, there's the article that I'm pointing to. It's from Of Two Minds by Charles Hugh Smith. The title is "The Schizophrenic Deep State is a Symptom, Not the Disease." The threat to America and Americans is not monolithic. If you think that there is this one cabal of conspirators that is bringing everything down, think again. There are lots of cabals in every corner of government and Wall Street. They're all over the place and tearing at each other while tearing at you. It's the same greed and corruption that tore the Roman Empire apart. The fall of America seems to be following the fall of Rome in almost every detail. I'm waiting for news of Washington's phantom legions, if you know what I mean. And of course, you won't know about Rome's phantom legions. Washington's phantom legions, or that reference, unless you learn a little bit about the phantom legions, or should I say the legions that did not exist in the Roman Empire, but were still being funded. Okay. Nice bit of corruption that was going on there 2,000 years ago. Now there's this one. Washington Post contributor declares, "God bless the deep state and U.S. intelligence agencies," ignoring the partisan figures that once led them. And this one's from an article on Free Market Shooter. Okay. The corruption and insanity of the deep state is almost more than I can stand. In fact, looking at just the photos of the corrupt persons of uncertain parentage almost made me want to scream. And when it's just too much, I often do. My poor neighbors must be wondering sometimes what's happening with all the outrage that they hear coming from our little apartment. Okay, next one is Call Curtis. The government seized $29,000 of mine when I did nothing wrong. And this is an article from CBS Sacramento. This poor guy had almost $30,000 US stolen from him by the US government, and they do not care if you are innocent. It doesn't matter to them. It's money. You're carrying it. They'll take it. It's that simple. Welcome to the 21st century version of America. Thank God I'm in Taiwan. Okay, a couple more articles, and this next one is from Gog and Magog, and I've been writing about the coming of Gog and Magog for a while. You can find all of that in my book, EzekielsFire.com, or on EzekielsFire.com. And the articles below, or the one article below, points to that coming. I really, really, really hope that you'll be ready for this. Please read Ezekiel's Fire to make sure that you are. And yes, it's free. This one is Iran's Rouhani warns Trump about mother of all wars. It's a Reuters article, and it's referenced above in the article. The point that everyone should understand is that the Iranian regime is desperately interested in its hold on power. There is nothing that they will not do to stay in control. Nothing. The average European and American does not understand this fantastic resolve. The mullahs in power are utterly messianic in their determination to bring about the conditions that will lead to the return of their Mahdi. Unfortunately, the nuclear deal that was not a deal created by Obama has given a tremendous amount of aid and help to the crazy mullahs in Tehran. Hopefully, These rabid Shiites don't have a nuclear warhead small enough to fit on a missile. If they do, expect an EMP attack on the U.S. And let me remind you, Iran has had a very, very, very close relationship to North Korea and their nuclear weapons program. It is very possible that Iran does have such a nuclear warhead that can fit on a missile that can be launched over the United States and exploded in near-Earth orbit, taking out all of America's ability to generate electricity. Please, my hope is that you can answer yes to my question about your ability to survive without running water. Is there a stream of clean water that you can get to get enough water to drink so that you can survive? If you can answer yes, you might be able to survive what's coming to America. Maybe yes, maybe no. There are other factors involved, but let's move on. Here's the last article for this really long SchockCast. If people really want to do BDS, boycott, divest, and sanction, they better get rid of their iPhones. This is from YouTube. And this is about Israel. I am horrified by BDS and the evil propaganda with which they have been infecting the minds of students. These are the same kinds of vile and satanic people that are destroying society from inside out. So if you fight against BDS, you do more than just help a beleaguered and persecuted country like Israel. You also help slow down the corruption and contamination of your society. So do the right thing and actively push back against BDS. You'll do more than just help Israel. You might even save your own country. Well, that's it for this week's SchockCast. I truly hope that you'll be ready for what is coming. A prudent man foreseeth the evil and hideth himself, but the simple pass on and are punished. That's Proverbs 22:3. If you find a flaw in my reasoning, have a question, or wish to add your own viewpoint, leave a comment on the Omega Shock website or in the comment section below. Omega Shock readers and SchockCast listeners leave awesome comments, and I value each and every one of them. Again, make sure that you are subscribed to the Shock Letter at theshockletter.com. In fact, everyone should sign up for the Shock Letter. It's free. Subscribing and unsubscribing is easy. Just have to click the unsubscribe button below at the bottom of every SchockCast emailing and SchockCast letter, and share the subscription list or the link to that subscription list with anyone, period. You have my promise that, I'm sorry, there is no way I would ever share the subscription list with anyone, period. Forgot to add that. You have my promise on that. For those of you on YouTube, hit that subscribe button below. It's just down there. And click the bell to get notifications. And if you like this video, give it a thumbs up. All of that helps you and me get the message out. And so, allow me to work on my Hebrew and close with this blessing from Numbers chapter 6, verses 24, 25, and 26. Yevarecha Yehovah v'yishmerecha. Ya'er Yehovah panav elecha v'yichunecha. Okay. Yisa Yehovah panav elecha v'yisa lecha shalom. The Lord bless thee and keep thee. The Lord make his face shine upon thee and be gracious unto thee. The Lord lift up his countenance upon thee and give thee peace. Numbers chapter 6, verses 24 to 26. May your pastors give you the words that you need to continue walking the path that God calls you to follow. And Lord willing, I will see all of you next week.